What is up, guys? Welcome back to Vanover Machine and Repair, and today we are continuing on with a brand new Lion lathe series. Now, in the previous video, you saw us get this thing unloaded, get it set up. Today, we're talking tooling. If you love machining, this is not the video for you. We might do a little bit of machining, but we're talking today. And the reason why we're doing this video is because tooling is very important, and it's something that I'm passionate about. And if you're buying a new machine or setting up an existing machine, I think it's important to assess what type of tooling you need on that machine. And we're going to be walking through what type of tooling we got for this brand new machine and how I'm going to be setting it up. So without further ado, let me bring you in close and we'll start to unbox what we got for the new lathe. Before we jump into the new stuff, let's talk about what was standard or what came with the machine tooling wise. First and foremost, we have a nice 16-inch 3-jaw chuck. This is made by BSW. They're a European company and they make a fairly decent product, but we did get upgraded 3-jaw chuck, which we'll talk about more in a minute. Also included with the lathe was this standard 4-jaw chuck. Now this is a 19-inch BSW as well, and they all have a D111 cam lock, which is super nice, and the bore on the inside is massive, like 6 inches or something. So this is really nice. Johnny was able to send me a spare adapter so I can adapt one of the other chucks that I have, but we got a 4-jaw chuck included with the package. We also got a 24-inch faceplate, and it's sitting here behind the American Pacemaker lathe. We are going to be building a cart to house all of the chucks, but until then we just needed to get it out of the way, and that's where it will lay with the Cosmoline still on it until we need it. And then over here we have the steady rests and follow rests that came with the machine. This follow rest is standard. It works pretty well, probably up to about 6-8 inches. We have a smaller follow rest in the back that does about 6 or 8 inches. That is standard. And I purchased this extra large follow rest. It goes up to about 13 inches in diameter. This was fairly expensive, but well worth it. I'm sure on the first or second job we use this, it'll pay for itself. I also have some parts for the taper attachment because we're not using that often, so we'll kind of keep them to the side, but when we need them, we can reinstall them. We also received these accessories, and I think they're going to be really nice to have. We have 3 chuck wrenches. We'll be making brand new ones because I like the custom made ones. We got a couple drifts. We have a handle, which is really nice actually for locking the carriage. We have a Morris Taper 5 dead center, and we have a dead center adapter for the spindle. I have no idea what the taper is on this. It's probably something unique, but on the inside it looks to be Morris Taper 5. This fits in, so if you want to turn something between 2 dead centers or a dead center and a live center, you put this in the chuck side, you put a dead center on the inside, and then on the other side you can put a dead center or a live center. And these two are really, really nice, high quality units. So this is some nice tooling to have. With the included tooling out of the way, let's get into the new stuff that we bought ahead of time in preparation for this new machine. So over here we have a brand new 16-inch bison chuck. Now this chuck is from 2008, but it was never used and still wrapped up in the original packaging. So let's get this out of the box and onto the bench and show you what we got. As you can see, this chuck is brand new, never been used before. We even have the test card and the chuck wrench. Now we still have all the factory Cosmoline, which I'm going to clean off camera and get this chuck ready to go. But I think we did pretty good. I got this at auction for about $1,000 bucks, and I think these are like 3 to 5 grand brand new. So we'll get this cleaned up and we'll move on to the next part. All right, with that chuck out of the way, let's get this tooling over to the bench. In most machine shops, tooling is really kind of an afterthought. They think about the machines as the first priority, but a lot of times tooling kind of falls to the wayside. And if you guys have worked in those shops, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what I try to do is make sure that we have the best equipment possible so we can be successful and not be frustrated with the equipment. With that being said, some of the tooling on the table behind me I've assembled for several years because we were using it for the original Lion lathe project, and we're able to repurpose that right now. And then some of that stuff that I have bought in the last couple months once we knew the lathe was coming in, but we're going to be buying loads more tooling as time goes on so we can make sure that we are fully stocked. Here's a sample of some of the tooling we have to start with. We have the brand new tool post, we have the tool holders, we have more tool holders, some U-drills, obviously the chuck, some boring bars, we have some live centers, some dead centers, and some chucks. We're going to zoom in to each one of these and show you what we have, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be getting that we don't currently have yet. In terms of dead centers and live centers, we have the plug that we talked about earlier, and this is actually an MT6, not an MT5. So we have an MT6 dead center. We have some sleeves, 5 to 4, 5 to 3, and 5 to 2. And in terms of sleeves, we're pretty well covered. We're not going to be going anything lower than 2. Now for live centers, we have 2 live centers. We have this brand new Bison heavy duty live center, Morse Taper 5, and I paid $60 for this. We had a gentleman parting out some stuff that he got from a Bison factory that was closing down, and so I got 4 of these centers. 2 of them are Morse Taper 6, and I only paid $60 each, so that's a crazy good deal. And then I bought this. This is a Royal CNC style. I like this for threading on smaller parts because it has an extended point. And we picked this up for less than $200, which is pretty dang good because this thing is well over $1,000 brand new. And this one was used, I believe, but it was just very minorly used, so we got a good deal on that. Now as far as what other live centers are we looking out for, so I'm going to be picking up a Skoda MT5 heavy duty live center as well, just to have as a backup, and then we're also looking for a bull nose center to have as well. Other than those 2, that'll pretty much cover us on centers. Moving on to the drill chucks. So for the first time in 5 years, I have purchased the coveted Jacobs 20N drill chuck. This one seems to be in really good shape. These are extremely expensive as well, but we got a good deal on this. I think I paid $150, which I think is a pretty good price, and it seems to be in great shape. Now, to be honest, I like keyless chucks. Keyless chucks are convenient, but they just do not work as well. And honestly, when it comes to doing work and having minimal issues, the super chucks are the best. They don't jam, they don't bind, and they just work. They just take a little bit extra time because you got to tighten them with a chuck key, but it's well worth it. So on this lathe, what we're going to do is we're going to have one of each of the sizes. So this is a 20, this is an 18N, and this 18N has a set of brand new jaws that I installed. And so this will be really, really nice to have. We need to change out the tang on the back, but this chuck is basically brand new. And I like these older Jacobs Super Chucks. The newer ones are just built a little bit different. They don't have the actual engraving in the sleeve. They don't feel quite as smooth. They feel a little bit more Chinese because they're made overseas. So I really like to get these old ones and rebuild them if possible with new jaws or regrind the jaws. So we're also going to be getting a number 16 and a number 14 for this machine. And the reason for that is even though something like this covers like 1/8 to 5/8, really it's ideal to match smaller drill bits with smaller chucks. They tend to run a little bit truer and work a little bit better than to have something like this and run, you know, maybe like a small 1/8 inch drill. Even though it'll hold it, an 1/8 inch drill will actually run better in a 14N So we're gonna have different sizes, and we can keep those loaded up with different drill bits to maximize efficiency. Now, in terms of tool holders, I have bought a couple in advance, but our tool holder game needs a lot of work. We really don't have a lot to start with. So I got all this stuff here when I bought that stuff from the Bison guy. And some of this stuff is nice, but a lot of it's larger and really, I don't know what we're gonna use, but we do have it. Recently I purchased this. This is a CNMG holder. It's real nice, but it is for a larger size, which is fine. But I do need to get one that's a 432 size. I believe this is a 6 series. And then we also have this guy. I really like this guy. This is a PCLNR. It's kind of like a CNMG with a positive rake, and it has a special tool holder. This is really good for heavy metal removal rates, and these, like a lot of other things, are pretty expensive. I think I paid $20 for this. Looks pretty much brand new, maybe used once. So we got these two to start off, but we are going to be buying a lot more tool holders because we need to cover a wide range. I like to have at least 10 of these set up at all times and another 10 on backup so we can do what we need to do. I've also been collecting U-drills, but honestly what I've learned recently when it comes to U-drills is these W&MG ones are going to be the best bet in terms of lower tool pressure, and a lot of these that I've gotten for pretty cheap, honestly, have different inserts, and so I don't know what we're going to be using here, but I have these 4 on the table, or 5, and I've got another 10 over there. I'm not sure if we're going to really use them, but we do have them, and then we got a couple of inserts for these tool holders. Now I will say what we're going to be using probably in lieu of these U-drills is spade drills and hopefully some HMD drills. So spade drills are going to work really well now that we have coolant. I have a couple of those for the other lathe that we'll be able to repurpose, but we need to buy some spade drills in some larger sizes as well, all the way up to 3-inch, so we'll be looking out for that. And then HMD drills, or HTS drills as Kennametal calls them, are special modular drill heads. They take a decent amount of tool pressure to run and a proper rigid setup, so we're going to be working on that. But hopefully something like that will allow us to drill long, deep holes efficiently. So once we get the proper setup for that, then maybe we can see how that works out. Now we already talked about this chuck, but what other type of chucks are we going to be getting for this machine? We do have 4 chucks already, including this one, but I want to get a 16-inch 6-jaw bison set true. Those are about $4,000, so we're going to be keeping our eye out for one of those. And then I also have a 20-inch bison 3-jaw chuck, and we need an adapter plate for the back of that. So that'll be really nice on bigger jobs. So we either need to buy or manufacture our own back plate, but those back plates are about $2 grand. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. That back plate that Johnny sent me is too small, and I knew that when he sent it, but that's what we need for that other chuck. So that would give us about 6 different chucks to choose from for this machine, which should be definitely more than enough. As for boring bars, we have a selection that we've started with here, and these ones over here are Valinite anti-vi bars, and they have all of these heads, and I have a couple smaller ones. These are pretty expensive, brand new, but Valinite is no longer in business, and so you can get these rather cheap if you get lucky. And I believe I paid like $300 for all of these with all the heads, plus 2 smaller bars that I use on the pacemaker. These work really well at reducing vibration, and that they have the adjustable or interchangeable heads, which is super nice. And it's nice that I have several different bars so we can have them set up with different heads. Most of the ones that I have, I think, are the D&MG style. I have one CNMG style, but I think I need to get a couple different head selections for these bars that I currently have. We also picked up an Aloris bar. This is an old school style with the square shank on one end. This is really useful for HSS in certain operations. Nothing crazy, but it's nice to have for the onesie twosie. And then we have one of these old school bars with the triangle inserts. I'm not sure if we're going to use this, but I have this and probably 10 other bars of this size with older style inserts. So in terms of boring bars, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a 1 inch, a 1.5, a 1 1/4, and a 2 inch solid carbide boring bar in various lengths. That is a lot of money in boring bars, but that's the game plan over time. Because the carbide boring bars just work super, super nice. And the carbide boring bars with modular heads are even nicer. Now we're also going to be making our own boring bars with coolant feed, just like some of the guys over at Hal Heavy Duty have done and Curtis. So watch out for that. That'll be at some point in the future because we need some bars that are even bigger than this for some upcoming jobs. So those will be, you know, double this diameter at least, and we'll have some custom heads. So that should be it for the boring bars. Now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, the tool post and the tool holders. So I purchased this tool post 3 years ago, and it has been extremely painful because it's been sitting in a box waiting for the other Lion lathe. But we have it, we're gonna use it on this machine, and when we get to the Lion lathe, hopefully we'll just buy a second one. But this right here is probably $7,000 of tooling. It's very expensive. I paid full retail. There's no sponsorship or association, but I did a bunch of research on tool posts. I have Aloris on all my other machines and am happy with the Aloris models, but this tool post seems to be slightly higher level and has more features. So I wanted to pick up one of these guys, and it's definitely a splurge, but I think it's gonna be well worth it, and it's gonna help increase efficiency and increase rigidity. And I did pick up this 2 inch holder on eBay for like 150 bucks. Just got lucky because it was cheap. But aside from that, we paid full price on all these other holders. The tool holders for this thing are like $200 to $400 each. Some of them are up to $600 for some of the dual boring bar clamping tool holders. So it gets pretty pricey pretty quick. So the next step is to get this guy unboxed, and we need to get it set up over on the compound, and we may need to modify or make a nut. All right, let's get this guy unboxed. All right, looks like it comes with a nut, which is good. Those are our dowel pins. We have our handle and our bolts to mount this to the lathe. Wow, look at that thing. Now that's a marvel of engineering right there. The thing is beautiful. Let me just get the Cosmoline cleaned off. As someone who owns an Aloris tool post, multiples of them, I will say that the build quality on this is definitely higher, and the Aloris is not weak on build quality. This just has that extra level of machining and etching and color selection, and you can tell this is a very high quality unit. So the next step is we're gonna get this disassembled. We'll get the handle on here. We need to get our T-slot milled out and mounted in our compound, and then our rotary base drilled and tapped so we can get this over on the machine. Oh, look at that. It already has 2 holes for us. That's nice. All right, so we need to go over and measure the compound and get this machined out. And then I believe we need to disassemble this so we can get out the base plate that indexes on this nut. Here's the compound, here's the nut. You can see how massive this nut is going to be, but that's good. It'll distribute the load over that entire slot. But we have a lot of material to remove. Let's get this over to the mill and start cutting our grooves for our giant T-nut. All right, we're gonna start by getting this faced off. This is 32 mil. It's gonna come down to 27.5. We'll come down to 28, and then we'll finish it a little bit later. And we'll just use this to kind of rough it out. Take 1 mil. 700 RPM.
Now that we got this faced off, we're gonna come in here and just trim down both edges for the step. We'll touch off, maybe take like 150 thousandths, measure it and adjust our DRO accordingly. And then we'll get it roughed out, so to speak, and we'll test fit it over at the compound and kind of dial it in for the last few thousandths. $64.92. All right, we got this nut finished out and it's a good fit. And I will say two things. First off, when you're making this, it may be really tempting to make this nut super tight, and you gotta be really careful. I made this nut a real tight fit on the slot. This lathe is brand new. Everything is unworn, undamaged. And what I didn't realize was the casting here is not perfectly square, and had I not checked it, it was fitting really tight, but really the reason for that was these corners were not 90 degrees and my chamfers weren't large enough, and so it was actually contacting in the slight radius on the corners, and that is not going to give us the best clamping pressure and could potentially put undue stress on this casting. So even though it makes sense that you want this, you know, as tight as possible, make sure that you have enough clearance in the nut and make sure the nut is actually seating on these flats or lands properly. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues. The other thing is, make sure that this nut is below the surface. It doesn't really matter how much, but I've seen some people try to make it even with the surface, and that is a bad idea. You want to make sure there is an air gap between this and this surface, so that way when you're clamping on these two surfaces, not on the nut. If it's very, very close to even or even slightly under, like a thousandths or something, and it deforms and the tool post base touches this nut, then you're going to lose clamping force. So make sure that this nut is below the surface when it's pulled up. So with that done, we're going to go over, grab the tool post and get it on the compound. Get our nut installed first, or our stud I should say. Actually, I want to double check here. Yep, see, it's a good thing I'm checking. 10 thousandths. So even just the force of me holding it up there and checking it wasn't enough. With this stud, I can thread it down, which pushes up the nut, and I'm proud. So I need to take care of that. I'll go ahead and mill this down some more off camera, and then we'll continue on with getting this installed. All right, I got this trimmed down. And then I went ahead and just trimmed down the thread so that it doesn't bottom on the bottom of the T-slot. We're ready for final assembly. Just get a little bit of red Loctite on there. There you go. Seats, moves freely, doesn't bind. We'll tighten this using a smooth jaw Knipex. Should be good. Then we'll take the tool post swivel base, Install that. We're gonna line up our dowel pins. Interesting, these dowel pins are factory locations and they don't seem to line up. So either I'm crazy or Dorian's machining is off. Okay, well there's a burr on that one. There we go, cleaned up that burr. All right, these are the factory locations. Kind of seems like they're off. Hopefully I'm wrong. Let's see. Repeats within 5/10, but we can't drill dowel pins correctly. Well, Dorian kind of failed on that one, huh? Well guys, this is extremely disappointing. I know I should have double checked their work before I started, but the reality is I'm a 32-year-old machinist and Dorian has been producing stuff for years. So I feel like I'm not at fault completely for trusting that they can manufacture a basic T-nut within a reasonable spec. These pins are not even close. They're like maybe almost an 1/8 inch off. So I have no idea what happened. I called them, of course they didn't respond, and by the time they get back to me, I'm sure I will have made another one of these. But anyway, it ain't gonna make any difference to you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and just make another one of these off camera and continue on with where we are right now. So it is what it is. Well, it's the next day and we got another nut made. I had to wait for a 10mm reamer because I didn't have one. So we made the nut. I came in this morning and we finished reaming the holes, and we're gonna get this fit up and see how we did. And I will say straight off the bat that these holes on these dowel pins are way tighter on the one that I made. These dowel pins were a mild press fit, but on theirs, they just kind of fell right through. So to me, not only were these holes not aligned, but if you want to keep this from torquing, you want a nice, tight, precision fit, so that way stuff doesn't move and flex. A fit like that. A fit that you have to tap down to get. And that brings me to the next point. And I wasn't going to say anything about this, but I'm honest with you guys, and we're gonna have a little bit of a rant here. So I remember when I purchased this tool post, and I purchased it through KBC Tools. Michelle was very easy to deal with. I love working with KBC Tools. They are great. This Dorian tool post is an extremely high quality unit, but I specifically remember dealing with Dorian is not the best experience. When we tried to buy this, the sales rep, whoever it was, I believe it was a woman, gave us a very hard time, almost like they didn't want to sell us one. And this is a lot of money. I mean, we're talking, you know, $5, $6, maybe even a little bit more, $1,000 for the tool post and the tool holders. And I remember going back and forth with the rep at Dorian, and she was just rude. And I know people have bad days, but this was over multiple days and maybe even over several weeks or a week and a half, and it was just not a good experience. I wasn't gonna say anything because stuff happens, but then when I went to fit this up and it didn't fit, it's just like another kind of nail in the coffin of Dorian's sort of customer experience. Now, obviously, when you look at this tool post, it is clear that it is made on a CNC machine to a high tolerance, and they have the ability to do a good job. I don't know for sure, but it is my guess that these nuts are made by hand because it was off so bad that I just don't know how you'd let something like that slide from a QC standpoint. I mean, if this was off 5/1000ths, yeah, the fit wouldn't have been as good as this, but it probably would have been fine. There's clearance in this, like 1/1000ths or 2, so it can, you know, fit, and it would have worked. But I mean, this was off, this hole was off center, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 thousandths to one side. I mean, that's pretty bad. And these nuts, you know, they were raw, you know, like bar stock they cut down. So I kind of think that they just had someone sort of punching out the 2 holes and drilling and tapping that hole manually, but I don't know. But even when I called them yesterday and again today, there's one person working in customer service, both women that I talked to over there. They're a little bit difficult to understand, and the customer service just doesn't seem to be the top priority over there, in my opinion, from dealing with a lot of companies. So that's just something that I would keep in mind if you're thinking about buying one of these or anything from Dorian. The product itself seems to be excellent, but I think they definitely have room for improvement in customer service and obviously manufacturing. But at the end of the day, we got this done, and you know, that's my little rant about Dorian. And we'll get this back together, and from here on out, it should be nice and easy, smooth sailing. A couple of weeks have gone by since we got this tool post set up on the lathe, and we've used the machine several times, and we've come up with a better system for our tooling. So we're going to walk through more details on what tooling we did have set up and just some minor changes that we've made to the lathe now that we've started using it. So let me bring you over here to the tool cart, and we'll talk through each of the tools that we're going to be using and why we do a setup like this over with our lathes. Real quick, before we jump into those other lathes, I just wanted to show you this cart for the American. It's fairly updated and it's pretty optimized, and this is the concept that we're going to be going for over on the Lion lathe tool cart. We have all the tool holders that I regularly use up in the front. We have the boring bars and all those set up here behind, and we have some extra tool holders stacked in the back. And what's really, really nice about this setup is this top shelf. This top shelf allows me to store the drill chucks vertical and the live centers vertical, so we have a nice place to put them. And the reason why that's really critical is this stuff is round, and when you lay it on a bench, it likes to roll. So to be able to set these vertical means that they have their own spot, so I can see if they're missing, and they don't have to worry about falling off. We have a spot for our Torx keys, which is super important. I have a spot here for my handle that I use on the chuck wrench if I want to get something real tight. We have center drills in here. We have our hex keys, which we use for the Aloris tool holders. We have our drifts. We have our reducing sleeves. I even have a rod here that we have for the Allen wrenches to give more leverage. I have a chip shield that we use if we're doing bronze or brass, just to keep everything. We have our pliers that we use to grab swarf or whatever. I have this, which is an attachment for the drill, so I can use on the compound for power feed. We have our wrench for the actual swiveling of the compound, and we have the steady rest underneath. And overall, this setup has worked really, really well. I've had this cart for probably 2-3 years, and in the last couple weeks, I added a couple more features to this cart, and this really helps you stay organized, because when you're machining or doing any work, stuff starts to get scattered all over the place. So to be able to have a specific spot for everything really helps you to be efficient and minimize clutter. So this is kind of the concept of what we're aiming for the other machine, but it will be much bigger because the tooling is bigger, and I want to integrate a bench like we have here into this cart. So it's going to be kind of a fusion of this and that over there. Here's a look at the area right behind the lathe, and I have been doing manual machining for several years now. And one thing I've learned is if you want to be efficient on the lathe, you need to have your tooling, you need to have it accessible, and ideally you need to have a workspace near the lathe. And so what we've done is what I consider stage 1 of tooling and tabling near this lathe. Now what I mean by that is this is a quick and dirty setup to get us going, but we're going to do a stage 2 or a more optimized setup that makes better usage of the tooling and storage, kind of like we have over on the green lathe. The ultimate goal is to build a custom cart that has this Lista cabinet fully integrated in, and on that cart we're going to have a nice rack system set up so these tool holders will have their own place, and more importantly, stuff like this Morris taper tooling can sit down in a holder and stand vertically, and we can have a spot on the cart for the wrenches and the various different things that we need when we're using the lathe, and everything will have its place. That's why I purchased this cart, because I wanted to integrate this cart into that setup. And we're also going to make sure that that bench provides a nice work surface for work pieces and drawings. But for now, until we build that, this mobile cart will kind of work temporarily and kind of get us by. So with that being said, let me give you a closer look at the tooling we've loaded up in the tool holders, and we'll talk through why I've chosen each specific tool and what we use it for. This is a closer shot of the tool holders that we're mainly going to be using on this lathe, and I want to state the obvious. There's a lot of money when it comes to investing in your tool holders for your lathe, and as you go up in size, it gets incrementally more expensive. These tool holders from Dorian are anywhere between $300 and $600 each, which is just ridiculous in terms of the cost. And generally, I like to build my collection over time just because of the cost. And on this machine, I was able to get probably 60%, 70% of the tooling up front. I had, maybe 30 to 40% of what was here, and I purchased a couple additional holders when we knew we were getting the lathe. But this stuff is expensive, and it's best purchased over time and in chunks. Because it can really add up quick, especially the boring bars. I like to run solid carbide boring bars, and a 2-inch solid carbide boring bar is like $2,000 just for the bar without the head. So the other lathe cart that I have over there has about 20 holders on there, and those holders are about 30 to 40% cheaper than this size, but that cart probably at least has $5,000 or $6,000 in tooling, and this cart would probably be 30% more when it's fully tooled up. So over time, I'll slowly build that, and I'm not telling you that to brag or boast, but just so that way if you're getting into this, you know that there is a excessive expense on tooling, but once you invest that, this tooling will last 20, 30 years, and will continue to pay it back over time. So with that out of the way, let's go into each tool holder that I currently have set up for the lathe and why I am running that tool on this machine. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the tool holders themselves. And not to be confusing, but these are called tool holders and these are called tool holders. They both share the same name. Now you'll notice that I do make a modification to these tool holders here, these first couple. I've ditched the factory locking ring in lieu of these collars. I like this design because these can loosen up over time, and a lot of times I find myself grabbing the tool holder from this, and a lot of times you can actually twist or change the tool height. These work really nice because once you set them, they're not going to move unless you get an Allen wrench. Only thing I don't like is I wish the diameter was a little bit bigger. They do work, but the engagement on the tool holder is not quite as wide as I would like. So we might make some custom ones of those. But I seen this idea online and I really liked it, so I figured I'd give it a shot. So starting off with the most used tool holder, we have a C&MG 432 tool holder. Now this guy is an ISCAR DCLNR 20-4, and I did go with ISCAR for most of the tooling over here at the Lion lathe. No particular reason. I've used Kennametal, I've used ISCAR, Sandvik, and for the most part I like all of them. They all have their pros and cons, but recently I've been really liking the ISCAR tooling, and I like what they have to offer, and I like the grades of inserts that they have. and I just wanted to give that a shot for the Lion lathe. The other thing is this style of tool holder with this clamp here, I like it a little bit better than what I have over on the green lathe, which has a narrower clamp, and I just feel like this is a little bit more heavy duty and it's going to last a little bit longer. These tool holders basically last forever, but like the screws can get stripped out or the clamps can break. So little details like that, even if they're a little bit over-engineered, just kind of help long-term of the life of the tool holder. And most of the tool holders are going to be 1.25" shank. These will hold 1.5". But an issue that I ran into, which you've seen in the last video, is some of the larger shank tooling, the 1.5", sorry. The tool inserts are up so high that I barely have any adjustment. So like this 1.5" tool holder, I actually machined 1/4 inch off. Otherwise, my adjustment would be bottoming out. So most of these tool holders are the 1.25". So I really like this style of insert. The CNMG is very durable. It's very cheap, very cost effective because it's very popular. It's probably one of the top 3 most common insert geometries, and it's just a good all-around insert for roughing and finishing. For me, I generally use this for roughing, but it also does leave a really good finish if you have the right insert. So that's what we're using for this tool holder. Moving right along, this would be my second favorite or second most used insert. This is a DNMG, and again, this one is an ISCAR. It's a DDJNR 16-4, and it is a DNMG holder. And I have a Kennametal version of this over on the blue lathe and the green lathe. But this ISCAR version, again, I like a little bit better than the Kennametal just because of the clamp. Now, I think Kennametal does have a clamp style like this, but this style clamp, I feel like I enjoy it a little bit more than the other one. But this guy I use mostly for finishing. And this insert works really nice because it's really narrow, so it can get right up to a shoulder really easily, and it leaves a really nice finish because it has a tighter radius on the end, obviously depending on which nose radius you go with. But I do find that I like this in general for finishing, especially when it comes to boring. And overall, I generally use this guy for roughing and this guy for finishing. Now, moving right along, we get into some of the big insert tool holder. So this guy right here is, I think it's a PCLNR, let's see. Yeah, PCLNR 24-5X. It's also an ISCAR, and this guy is basically a CNMG style. It's a 600 series that has a positive raked insert, and it has a very aggressive basically chip forming insert profile. So this one is really nice because you don't have a clamp or anything in the way, but the insert itself is really good for heavy cutting. Now this insert, if I remember right, has a depth of cut of 315 or a total diameter removal of, what would that be, 630. That is what is recommended. I've gone deeper than that. But this guy moves some metal, and it does it pretty efficiently. The only con with this is it requires a ton of horsepower to run, and you really have to optimize it. You've probably seen me use this in several videos. The CNMG is fairly forgiving in this size, but this is not very forgiving. I have broken several of these inserts. They're like $28 each. They're pretty expensive in this grade. And I've stalled the lathe probably with this insert tool holder more than any other tool holder. So you really have to have it set up right. But when this is dialed in, this does a really nice job at removing metal really efficiently. And these inserts kind of last for a very long time. Generally, I just break them from doing something dumb before they wear out. But this is a very robust, very like heavy turning focused insert arrangement with the tool holder. This is not going to do well if you're taking 200 thousandths or you're feeding real weak. You got to push this thing hard, and you have to take really, really deep cuts, but when you do, it works out really, really nice. Moving right along, we have a Kennametal. We have a top-notch tool holder. This is for threading. I really do like the top-notch style. I have a lot of top-notch. There's other styles, lay down, but I really like this style being a top-notch. And I like it on the boring bars because it's a little bit more low profile compared to some other designs. So this is just I think it's like a number 4. This one is NSR 23D, so it's actually a number 3 size. And it's a Kennametal top-notch insert tool holder. And this will do like up to Acme, I think it's 5 pitch on this size. And then you have to go up one more size, which would be a number 4 top-notch to get the more coarse Acme pitches. But this guy is pretty much the workhorse of threading for me. And what's really nice is this insert is really low profile on the side. So I use this quite a bit for chamfering, especially up to a shoulder. It's not 45 degrees, it's 30 on each side, 60 total. But in low clearance applications, this guy is really nice for chamfering as well. So it gets a fair amount of use. Next one on the list is the parting blade. Now parting is very, very interesting. Tree panning is even more interesting, but grooving in general is a little bit strange in my opinion. There are a lot of different styles of grooving inserts and a lot of them work, but grooving is really challenging because there's a lot of tool pressure. Grooving, you gotta have the right setup, you gotta have the right feeds and speeds, or else it's gonna fight you. Now I've had really good luck with these Iskar TGFH 32.5. So this is a 32 millimeter tall blade, and it's a 5 millimeter width. I think it's a width insert actually, so I think the holder is a little less, but it will go maybe up to 5 millimeters width on the insert, if I remember right. But anyway, I like this style of insert. I've had good luck with it on the blue lathe and the other lathe. Basically, this is different than the traditional insert parting blade. It's a little bit different design, but I really do like it. And as far as the inserts, I pretty much always run the same grade. And this wider insert is tough when it comes to parting. You really need to be rigid. 3 millimeter would be better, but there is a time and place to have a wider insert like this and a wider blade. It does offer more rigidity and is less likely to snap, which does happen. I've probably gone through 5 of these parting blade holders since I started machining. And you know, you can do the best you can by not trying to be in a precarious situation. But you know, you are going to break these, and these are not cheap. I want to say these are $130 each MSRP. So when you break one, you know, it's no fun. Now there is 2 sides to it, so that helps. But yeah, I always keep one on hand because this is the one tool holder that isn't going to last for 5 years. You know, I probably get 6 months out of these. So in terms of parting, I pretty much never use the HSS blades on my machines. I almost always use the carbide ones. And the reason for that is parting is really tough. And when the inserts go bad, I can change them out, know that I have a sharp insert, and I do, you know, harder materials. So these, I really like the way these work out. Now we are going to get a second tool holder body so that I can run another copy of this with a 3 millimeter, just so I have one of each. It just depends on the diameter you're using. I use this for grooving as well. So it just depends on what you're doing with it. Next on the list is a button or round insert. Now these do have a very specific application. I think this is a SCR. Yeah, it's a weird one. And I want to say it's a 4, okay? So 4 is the size of the insert. And these are very handy to have. I don't use them all the time. They're really good for removing welds or trying to machine in tough spots, but these are even worse on the machine than the parting blades because you're doing a grooving operation and you're usually feeding in directly, and it's a lot of tool pressure. So these do work well, and you should have one of these set up on a machine. I don't use it all the time, but when I have it, it's there. And we mostly use this for doing some radiusing in corners and weld removal. And yeah, that's pretty much all we have to say about that. The next one is one that I am really looking forward to using, and that one is this brand new, to me, chamfering setup from Iscar. So let me move this out of the way. We have set up here a DSSNR 2525M-12. That's a mouthful. So typically when it comes to chamfering, there are kind of two styles that I like to use. The one style is a negative rake, which this is. The insert is usually, kind of kicked down at an angle, a little bit more aggressive chamfering, but the inserts are more durable, right? And you can use all 8 sides. The other side is a positive raked, which I typically use on the smaller machines. Those have like a crown, or they're kind of kicked up at a positive rake. They do a really good job. They're really nice and sharp, but they're a little bit less durable, and they only have 4 sides. But what I really love about those positive rake chamfering tools is I can use the side of that tool to do some facing. And I know that they make combination where you can kind of have both, and that's what this is. But for the tooling that I've seen, and for what is more commonly acceptable, is for most chamfering tools that are negative rake, the insert is actually positioned in the center of the tool body. And here is an example of that on the other lathe. This insert is the same series, right? But it's in the center. So it's really good at doing heavy chamfering because it's strong, got 8 sides, which is nice, but you can't take advantage of the corner of the insert, which you can do on a positive rake. So I did some digging, and I found this guy, which is the best of both worlds. It is pitched forward, and it's also canted sideways. So you can face, and you can chamfer, and you have the ability to have 8 different sides and the heavy duty insert. Now this was a special order. It's not like super custom, like you can't find it, but this is a non-returnable item when I ordered it from Carbide Depot, and it's not that common. So I think it's an amazing idea, and I would use this on all my machines, but to be honest, for whatever reason, this insert design style is a little bit less common, but this really gives the best of all the worlds, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to really use this. And I went ahead and did kind of my special, which is on the back. I went ahead and made an adapter to hold a like a milling cutter, which has an insert in it for ID chamfering. So what I like to do is I have this in one direction, I do my OD chamfering, and then I flip it around and I do my ID chamfering. And you can kind of, get a better idea of what this is. We just turned down a double step cylinder, drilled and tapped a hole, and then reamed a 1/2-inch hole. So that way this kind of has a mount. And this is nice because it juts out and it has really nice sort of clearance. So that way it can get the internal chamfering. So I really, really like this double-sided setup because I know that when I grab this chamfering setup, this one tool holder is going to kind of meet all my chamfering needs, which is really nice. And the last tool holder is very similar to the one we did before on number 2. I believe it's the same part number, just with a different letter at the end because it's a left hand, I think. And the reason we have a left hand and a right hand is because I do a fair amount of repair work, and although I do prefer to machine from right to left, there are several times in repair work where you have to machine from left to right, and it's good to use the opposite handed tool. So we don't have the opposite handed tool for the C&MG. but we will be getting that, and it's good to just kind of have both. It's less common, but it does happen enough to where I wanted to have one mounted up in the tool holder. So that's pretty much most of the tool holders that we're going to use day to day that aren't boring bars. We do want to get a couple more tool holders. Let's see. This guy here, I want to get that in a tool holder. I also want to get this guy in a tool holder. And then lastly, I want to get this guy in a tool holder. So just briefly, this guy right here is a Shars. And honestly, for these style of tool holders, the Chinese tool holders are fine. This is a CCMT, and I really like these inserts for doing finishing, mostly on bronze and aluminum. I pretty much don't use them on steel, although they do work well on steel. But the reason I like these is these inserts are cheap. So when it comes to doing aluminum, which I don't do a ton of, but I still do a fair amount of aluminum, especially for more prototyping stuff, this is really nice because I can unscrew this and use some aluminum inserts, which I get from China. They're these guys right here. And they're literally, I want to say they're $10 for a pack. So they're $1 an insert. They work really well. They're ground. They give a nice finish. And what's nice about these is because they're so cheap, right before I take a finish cut where it's critical, I'll change the insert and we'll just get a great finish. And I throw them away. They're cheap. They're easy. Works great. So I want to get this in a tool holder on this machine. So we got to purchase some more tool holders for that. Also want to have the neck size down in this button insert. I think, yeah, this is a 3/16 3D. It's good to have the smaller sizes specifically on shaft work. Now, obviously, you can use this for removing welds and stuff like that, but the smaller diameters are good for radiuses in the corners of shafts to reduce stress risers. So it's really nice to have these in kind of a couple sizes. This next one, I don't really like these triangle inserts if I'm being honest, but I've seen a lot of people use these for cutting kind of steady bands on larger parts, and I want to give it a whirl. I think the main benefit is because it's centered, you can kind of come in straight and go a little bit to either side, and like the clearance is nice with these, and these triangle inserts are super robust. But these inserts, in my opinion, just in general, are kind of the older style of insert. So it's something that was more commonly used 10, 15 years ago. You can still get them, people still use them. Not my go-to, but I think, especially over here on the big lathe, for some of the steady rest work and even some heavier chamfering, I think this could be useful. So we're going to get that loaded up in a couple weeks or a couple months when I get some more tool holders. Taking a break from tool holders to move into some actual tools. It's important near your machine to have all the tools that you use. So we have Allen wrenches, we have Torx keys. So for Allen wrenches, I'm pretty particular about my Allen wrenches. On the other lathe, I have a Wera set, and I really like it. I think they're German. I wanted to go with this PB Swiss set because they're supposed to be the best. I don't know that I like them that much, to be honest. They're high quality, but honestly, the Wera ones that I have over there were half the price, and I kind of like them a little bit more. I think I'm going to switch to a T-handle because I use these quite a bit, especially for taking out tool holders and making adjustments, and this is just kind of clumsy and real tight. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to get the two most common sizes that I use are 3, and I'm going to get them in T-handles. But I did start with these, and yeah, they do look cool. So in terms of the Torx, though, I'm really happy with this setup. I have these Weha Torx bits or drivers or whatever you want to call them over on the other machine, and I really like them. Now I know with inserts there is a very specific torque rating that they want you to torque these down to, and they have the little flag wrenches, and I don't like those flag wrenches. I like these things. Now you can over torque it with these, so you got to be careful, but you do have more leverage, and if you're working on a machine, you know that a lot of times some of these can get stuck. So with these guys, you have plenty of torque. I went ahead and got this holder with this set, and I actually really like it. You can see exactly which number. You can put it back, It's nice and efficient, very user-friendly. I mean, look how dirty this T15 is, and it's only been a few weeks. I mean, that's, you know, I use this quite a bit. This set here was like $10 less than this set. So, you know, go figure. These are made in Poland. These are, I don't know, maybe they're made in Switzerland because they're PB Swiss. I don't know. But yeah, 110 bucks for that and like $90 for that. This is definitely a better value, and the quality on these is great. So continuing on, back to the tool holders for the boring bars. So my boring bar game is pretty weak, I'm not gonna lie, but it's also probably the most expensive thing to set up on a lathe. And you know, as jobs come in, we're gonna be increasing the boring bars that we have, and obviously I'm pretty much out of room on the top of this cart anyway, so hopefully that coincides with us building a custom cart, so we'll have a little bit more room for the boring bar holders. I really like how Hal Heavy Duty has his lathe cart set up with the boring bars kind of like on their own rack. I'm going to do something similar to that because they can be a little bit unwieldy, especially as they get longer. And believe me, on this lathe, we're going to be making some really big custom boring bars. I know we have a job coming up where I got to do an ID of a stainless steel chamber, and it's like 16 inches deep, and I need to be able to get in there and bore that out. And the longest boring bar I have is like 16 inches, but with the tool holder and the stick out and the rigidity, it ain't gonna work. So we're gonna make probably like a 2, 3, 4 inch boring bar. So that'll be a fun little project. But as far as what we have here, so currently I have 2 Valinite anti-vibe boring bars, and I really like these. They are steel boring bars, and they cut down on vibration, and they have interchangeable heads. Now currently I only have the DNMG style heads, and I like that. I use that a lot for finishing, but I haven't been able to find the CNMG heads for these DVI anti-vibration bars in this size. These are discontinued, and I got these very, very cheap, but the equivalent vibration dampening bars are thousands of dollars. So, you know, I don't have the exact heads that I want, but I got a good deal on them, and they do work really well. These are like kind of a competitor to a solid carbide bar. Price probably fairly similarly, maybe 20% less, but they do a good job of minimizing harmonics. They have a little like thing on the inside that sort of bounces at the frequency you're boring at, or that's at least how I understand it, to sort of cancel out ringing, and they do a good job. So currently I have this big 2-inch here. I have an 1.5 inches, both with the same size insert, and then I picked up this Schar's CNMG 432, which I use for roughing. It's a 1.5 as well, and this one is through Coolant. So ideally, what I would like to move to is a 2-inch solid carbide modular head boring bar, which is like $2.5 grand, a 1.5-inch modular head carbide boring bar, a 1-inch, and maybe a 1/2 inch, all solid carbide, but that's like $6 grand in boring bars. So that'll come in time, but this is where we're starting with right now. The most important thing for your boring bars, at least in my opinion, is make sure you got one for roughing, one for finishing, and you want to have them in different sizes. And as you can see, I'm pretty limited on sizes. Definitely have more of the bigger sizes, which is cool, right? The bigger ones are more expensive, and we got some of those, which is nice. But I do need to get some smaller bars for this machine for doing some smaller stuff. I also have a spare 2-inch holder, which is great, but that doesn't really help me in my quest to get some smaller bars. So I'm sure we'll fill that guy up, but for now, it's pretty much the only extra tool holder I have at the moment. And in the back, we have the drill holders, and I'm not gonna go through this. We already kind of talked about it on the bench, but I did pick up another drill chuck. I like to have a range, ideally. So there's a 20, there's an 18, now there's a 14, and I wanna pick up an 11. And we have, you know, new arbors on these two. And then I really do like these guys. These are the ER40 holders, and we keep these chucked up with center drills, keeps the center drills from slipping, and it keeps them more concentric than these guys. So I'm gonna grab a couple more of these. So I gonna have different setups in these guys. We have our centers, which we already touched on, and a couple sleeves. Other than that, the only other thing on here is we got our Anchorlube, and I've really been enjoying using this Anchorlube, and I switched to using it in a goldenrod oil dispenser, because one of the problems that I was having with this stuff is it kind of clogs in the bottle. Because it's water-based, it will kind of dry and kind of crust up. But in a pumper like this, when it does that, you give it a pump and it just shoots out. And it dispenses less and it's more direct. The other bottles you kind of squeeze and it kind of, you know, kind of gums out everywhere. So this has been working out really, really nice. And I like to keep my lubricants near each machine that I'm using. So the other lubricants that I should have over here, but I don't yet, is I want to get a WD-40 in a spray bottle. I use that when I do aluminum. And then I would like to have a whey oil spray bottle or a goldenrod so that I can oil the wheys with the whey oil. So that's pretty much the current tooling setup over here at the tooling cart. Let's move on to over at the lathe. Rounding out the tooling discussion over at the machine, we don't have a ton of tooling at the machine itself, but you'll notice a couple differences. First off, I've removed this guard, and I think that guard is really helpful in keeping the coolant near the chuck. I had a huge line here on the floor when I was just using the spade drill for 10 minutes, so that kind of sucks because it does a good job using that. But the main problem that I have with this machine is when you're over here operating the chuck wrench, you don't have enough room between the chuck wrench and the guard, and it's just very cumbersome. So we went ahead and got rid of that, and for me, I feel really nice because I can stand at the machine and kind of see over the machine. Also, when we're filming, you know, if you're standing near the chuck and you got a guard, you know, right next to me, and I got the carriage over here, and the carriage is rather large, and I got the camera right there, it's just cramped. So we went ahead and got rid of that, which is really nice. And then as a bonus, it kind of frees up this space so you can set stuff, which I know people don't like doing. But I'll get a nice black mat, kind of how I have on the American, so we can sit tools and they don't have to worry about vibrating loose. So that's kind of one change we made in terms of the ergonomics of the machine. Also, the chuck wrench. This is common. Everyone who gets a lathe or a chuck, the chuck wrench is weak sauce. So you know how we roll? We made our own big boy chuck wrench. So this guy is 1 inch, I think it is. 1 inch bar here. I think this is 1.5 here. And we did this out of stainless. And to be honest, stainless seems like it wouldn't hold up, but I have the same style over at the American, and it's held up really well. Very minimal wear, and the stainless is nice, it looks nice, and it doesn't rust. So I tried to make this nice and beefy because I want to be able to get a pipe on here and really wrench down and avoid this from bending. I was going to make this have like a detent and be able to come in the middle and then slide over, but you know, sometimes you just got to get things done and not over-engineer things. And I really like this larger wrench. The previous wrench was short. I don't even know if I have it anymore, but it was half this distance. So your hands were down here. And when you operate a lathe, at least for me and my ergonomics, I want to be able to grab this here, and I want to be able to move it down here to rotate the workpiece and adjust my gripping. So I might grip and then move it down here and, you know, grip. And with that smaller chuck key, basically because it was so close to this head, you could only operate it right here, and that makes 0 sense ergonomically. So we went ahead and made a custom wrench. And I'll go ahead and leave it here because I don't know that'll make some of you guys nervous as we continue on with the video. In the same theme as our stainless sort of wrenches and handles, I will show you the stainless Allen wrench holder that we made for the Dorian tool post. So let me show you that. So as you've seen earlier in the video, we had to remake this tool post nut because Dorian screwed up and remanufactured it wrong. What they also neglected to do was include this Allen wrench and Allen wrench holder in the box. Now, in all honesty, it's been 3 years since I purchased this. So yes, it's past the warranty, but this item was brand new when I pulled it out of the box. And I kind of thought, hey, I spent $6 on a tool post and the holders, and you guys screwed up the nut. So can you send me the dang Allen wrench and the tool holder, just kind of as like a, hey, let's take care of our customers? Dorian said no thanks. They wanted $185 for this little piece, which theirs isn't even as nice as mine, and an Allen wrench. So I said no way. So we went ahead and spent the time to make this kind of Allen wrench extender, and then we picked up a 12mm Allen wrench and press fit it into the body. And this is really nice because when you have a tool holder, you grab your tool holder and you sit it on here. Of course, I did it wrong. Let's try a new one. There it is. Let me try that other one again. Yeah, see, this is different. I bought this. This one's a new unit on eBay, but it's older series. So it's still a QITP 50-2, but it's slightly different. And look how much different this fits. It does fit. It's a tighter fit. It's almost like it doesn't work very well. This is the wrench, so we can come in here and tighten our tool holder and then loosen it, pull it off. All right, it's interesting. There, we're good. It's like if you go too far, maybe it starts to tighten again. Maybe that's me, maybe is that user error? I don't know. Anyway, that's one thing I don't know that I love about this guy. I do like the indexing, but the nice thing about the Aloris is one handle. You ungrip the handle and the tool holder slides off. This one has two. Now technically it has three because it has a center nut, but I leave it, you know, in the same spot. And I don't know. It's nice in one regard, the tool post, but it's kind of annoying in another regard. I can't decide yet whether I really like this model or I like the Aloris. This definitely has more features, which is cool. And I think it's more accurate. I don't know. It's kind of annoying that these two things are different. Anyway, that was the wrench that we made. Works out really nice. And we have our tool holders that slide on and off. The other thing that I'll say that's kind of minor, but all my machines I like to have air. And I've been having a problem on my machines where I have an air hose and I create a lot of chips, and I'm walking around and I step on the air hose because it's on the floor obviously, and a chip embeds itself and it breaks the hose down and it starts leaking. So I know some people don't like to use air. You got to be careful where you use it, but air has a place at the lathe, especially when I'm changing inserts. I like to be able to come up, blow out the pocket, and clean chips with this, doing it strategically. But I'm trying this out. I don't know if I like it yet, but I have some like shielding conduit on the hose, so that way as it's on the floor and hot chips are falling, it's not gonna puncture my hose. I really like the malleability of that rubber hose because this is kind of rigid, but you know, I'm not gonna have a problem with hot chips ruining my air hose. So that's kind of cool. And I need to get a better place for this. On all my other lathes, there's like a spot. You know, I like to kind of have it, you know, have a spot. That's one thing you probably picked up. I like everything in a certain place. It just makes me feel sort of at home and keeps me efficient and safe. So speaking of safe, maybe we should turn on that chuck with the key in there. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's move on to the last thing in regards to the tooling. All right, here is another tooling related setup in the machine as I struggle to move this tailstock. So the coolant setup sucked as it came. We've already modified it. This is version 1, just like the tooling cart. We're gonna do a better version down the road, but this is getting us by for now. The hose that they came with on the machine, complete garbage. I don't really know why I'm so OCD, but the hose flex thing or whatever, the line lock that they had, it would just drip and leak on the top of the cross slide. And that annoys the heck out of me. I mean, coolant shouldn't do any rusting, But when I have this on and it's just dripping coolant, it just, I don't know, that bothers me. So I switched it out to a name brand. It's a bigger size as well, which is really nice, and it doesn't leak, obviously. But the main benefit here is we added 2 valves, one valve for that, and another valve here for our spade drills and boring bars or whatever. And I'm using push to connect, which is nice because we can kind of come in here and hook in with a hose and then run coolant for here. And then if we want to take this, you know, and bring it over to the front and run it both ways, we can. Or if we want to run this over to the tool holder, we can. And if we want to run this to a boring bar, we can. So that's really, really nice. Doing this was good because it got this more far forward. The original one kind of came up to this point, and you really had to reach to get the hose there. Now already, you know, with my luck, I did a big job, like the first job, where it was like 20-something inches, and this was too close to the actual diameter, and that's another problem with this design that we have to remedy. This DRO post and this original coolant location is actually not correct, in my opinion. When you look at the diameter that this lathe is capable of swinging, which is 25 inches, and you put a 25-inch disc kind of in this region, this and this hits that disc. Now, in order to fix that, you have to run this back farther, and that is a very specific scenario that is not that likely to happen. Most shafts are small, and usually if you have a big diameter, it's near the flange. That's why I haven't done anything as of yet. But it does kind of annoy me that if you were to run something 25 inches, which you are going to do, and I even have a job I'm looking at right now that has 22-inch parts. If I chuck those up in this lathe, that 22-inch part, I'm fairly certain is going to hit this DRO rack and is definitely going to hit this. And these are the factory locations. So to me, that's unacceptable, but that's part of a bigger project of redesigning this whole sort of area back here and fixing the coolant kind of down the road. So for now, this is the setup, but even this, you know, kind of coming forward like this, which I did, is a problem. I think in the interim, as I do a little bit larger diameter stuff, we're just going to take this DRO off and kind of clock this back a little bit more. But this is significantly better, even though it looks super ghetto compared to what they had factory, specifically because we have 2 ports, we have a hose that doesn't leak, and you know, we're a little bit more farther forward, so that's really nice. In terms of spade drills, I currently only have 1 spade drill. That is main reason why I got this lathe, or one of the major reasons was running coolant, drilling holes efficiently. So I'm gonna get more spade drills and bigger diameters, but so far, night and day difference. Running coolant on your spade drill, it's just like, man, well, what was I even doing before? But, you know, just running coolant is not that simple. Coolant is messy, and you really wanna have it contained properly. And so, you know, even though we could have just thrown a coolant pump on that other machine, it does pay to have a machine like this with the proper trays and pumps and catches. So it is really nice for these spade drills. Well guys, that's pretty much it for the tooling discussion on this lathe. And I know we did a lot of rambling in this video. I enjoy lathes. I like talking about tooling. And if any of you guys are machinists, this is where you learn. Not that I know it all, because I clearly do not. I have a ton to learn. But these are the videos that I like to watch, because I can look and see how other machinists have their machines tooled up, and that allows me to grow as a machinist and come up with ideas on how I can do things better and become more optimized. And that is kind of the theme of tooling, and the way I like to do tooling is the tooling may be expensive, but if you set it up right, you take the effort that you put into work and make it a little bit more manageable and more enjoyable. Having everything on carts and set up with wrenches in the right spot, it makes things more pleasurable for me, and that's like the way that I like to operate my equipment. In terms of this machine, as you can see, it's even dirtier than it was in the beginning of the video. I've reviewed several issues that I've had with the machine, and I'm not trying to be negative. I really, really do like this machine, and it has a lot of great potential. It already has multiple jobs lined up for it, and I'm very, very glad that we have it in the shop. However, with that being said, with the amount of money that we spent on this stuff, there are several items that I am going to be addressing on the lathe in terms of making improvements or making modifications so that the lathe can be where I want it to be. And I think once we get to that point, this lathe is going to be 100% stellar. And you know, we'll bring you along for whatever we can in that journey. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of discussion-based video. You know, it's late in the evening Friday, and this is what I like to do with my time. And you know, so if you guys have any questions, have any concerns, let me know down below. And after this, we'll probably jump right back into the machining content for the next several weeks. So look out for that, and we'll see you in the next one.